Welcome, bienvenido, willkommen, benvenuto et bienvenue à cette conférence internationale sur le harcèlement à l'école. I'm very happy that all of you could join us for this international conference on school bullying. My name is Annette Gerlach and I will be mainly speaking French today, but don't worry, everything will be translated into French and English. I'm a journalist for the Cultural European platform and TV channel Arte, and I'm absolutely delighted to be your host today. Nous avons donc 2 heures devant nous pour cette conférence digitale co-organisée par le ministère français de l'Éducation, de la Jeunesse et du Sport et de l'UNESCO, conférence qui a été lancée il y a plus d'un an lors du dernier G7 sous présidence française. Et ce n'est pas un hasard si ce 5 novembre marquait également la toute première journée internationale contre le harcèlement et la violence à l'école, y compris le cyberharcèlement. Je me réjouis franchement que nous avons su rassembler des participants à un public d'une très grande partie du monde, tous liés et passionnés par les milieux scolaires et désirés de combattre ce mal qui est le harcèlement. Cette conférence est d'ailleurs s'achevée également transmise sur Facebook, YouTube ainsi que le site du ministère français de l'Éducation. Vous allez entendre aujourd'hui un grand nombre de ministres, mais aussi des spécialistes et des élèves. Ils rejoignent tous des pays aussi divers que, écoutez bien, Canada, Inde, Mexique, Finlande, l'Italie, l'Afrique du Sud, la France, bien sûr, Maroc, l'Irlande, Singapour, Grande-Bretagne, l'Argentine, sans oublier les représentants de la Commission européenne et de l'UNESCO. Le harcèlement au milieu scolaire, je pense que nous sommes tous d'accord, est un fléau mondial, certes vieux comme l'école, mais amplifié depuis de nombreuses années par le cyberharcèlement. Le but de notre rencontre digitale aujourd'hui est avant tout de sensibiliser tous les décideurs et professions liées à l'école, d'échanger de bonnes pratiques et de partager avec vous un catalogue de mesures et d'actions qui se sont avérées efficaces dans cette lutte. Avant que je passe la parole à la directrice générale de l'UNESCO, je voudrais juste vous rappeler l'étymologie du mot harcèlement en français. Le mot vient de cet outil agricole qui est la herse, the harrow in English, the egger of Deutsch, et qui est utilisé pour tourmenter et malmener la terre d'une façon constante. Et c'est bien là la différence entre des colibés ou des petites chamailleries entre enfants et le harcèlement, cette attitude répétée qui a pour but d'user, de miner et de démoraliser l'autre. Sur ce, je vais fermer mon micro pour laisser donc la parole à la directrice générale de l'UNESCO. Son intervention sera suivie des témoignages des élèves qui se mobilisent, eux, contre le harcèlement dans leur pays. Puis vous allez faire aussi la connaissance de Jean-Michel Blanquer, le ministre français de l'Éducation. But first things first, here comes Audrey Azoulay.
Merci beaucoup, Annette.
Thank you very much, Annette. Good day to all of you, and welcome to this conference for this first International Day to combat violence and bullying in school environments, including cyberbullying. This is so important in these sanitary conditions, in this sanitary crisis, because the world of school does not come to an end within the walls of the school. And I would like most particularly to thank the governments of Mexico, Morocco, and France for having come up with the initiative of proclaiming this day, which was approved unanimously by the 193 member states of UNESCO last year. And Annette, you already reminded us that this subject was very high on the agenda of the French presidency of the G7 last year. And on the occasion of this conference co-organized by France, I would like to thank Minister Jean-Michel Blanquer for what he has done. For many years now, experts have been warning us about this danger. In fact, the Swedish-Norwegian professor Dan Olweus, to whom I would like to pay tribute, and who passed away September last, and he claimed, using his own words, and I quote, that this is a fundamental human right for a child to feel safe at school and to be free from the oppression and the repeated humiliation of bullying. And today we are confronting this problem head-on as a global phenomenon which is undermining the fundamental right of a right to education. One child in three has suffered bullying by colleagues around the world, as shown by the UNESCO report published last year, which analyzed the situation in 144 countries, a report which also shared the most effective responses to be put in place. So it must be stressed with force that the consequences of bullying are profound and often devastating. This undermines the educational careers of young people. Young victims of bullying are twice as likely to miss classes as others. In terms of public health, the observation is also very serious. The results that we have 28% of pupils worldwide have been physically wounded at school by another pupil. Mental health of pupils is also affected. Young victims of bullying are twice as likely to feel alone, to behave in risky behavior, and to have thoughts and sometimes actions that are suicidal. And that is, of course, absolutely unacceptable. And behind the scourge of these figures, there is the drama that we must combat, and that is why I'm meeting today. And the scourge, of course, is being intensified on social networks. According to a recent survey by the United Nations of young people in 30 countries in 2019, every third young person claims to have been a victim of cyberbullying, and 1 in 5 claims to have missed school because of this. And for this reason, uh, uh, it is a problem that must be combated, and that is all the more true now in a lockdown circumstance. And so I would like to welcome the commitment of ministers of education of states who have joined us today to launch an appeal for the promotion of a code of good practices on the internet in order to prevent and combat cyberbullying of minors. We all have a duty of responsibility concerning cyberbullying, and there is also real responsibility on the shoulders of digital operators, and particularly those who run social networks. And that is something that cannot be ignored.
The United Nations and UNESCO in particular stand with you in this combat against bullying. Firstly, here at UNESCO, we provide data, global statistics, and also examples of international good practices to our member states on this issue. Secondly, we work to support the member states in the field by running campaigns to raise awareness of the issue of bullying. We also train teachers sometimes on these topics, for instance, in Mexico or Thailand, as we understand now from best practices that teachers have a key role to play and need to be trained on the matter. We also do this through international partnerships, working with other international organizations, with the United Kingdom, with Canada. We are part of the Safe to Learn campaign, which aims to share good practices on school safety. We're also a member of the Global Partnership to End Violence Against Children, a UN partnership launched by the Secretary General of the United Nations. Today's conference focuses on the fight against school bullying. However, I don't want to conclude my introduction without mentioning the violence that deliberately targets education itself, because education is the basis, the core for emancipation of our minds. The past weeks have been particularly deadly in this respect. I am thinking of the French teacher murdered for what he taught. I'm thinking of the students killed at their university, and just before that, other students at an education center in Afghanistan. I am thinking of the young children shot dead in their classrooms in Cameroon. Our most important partners today on this International Day are the students, are you, dear students, because this is first and foremost your day. This is why we need to hear your voice. We need you to tell us what bullying means to you so that we can seek ways to fight it together. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. I thank you all for your attention et bonne conférence à tous. Merci beaucoup.
Bonjour à tous, je m'appelle Émilie
Good
Bière.
day to all. My name is Émilie Bière. I'm 16 and I live in Montreal in Quebec. And I have been a victim of school bullying. It started when I was 7. It started with verbal assault, and then it turned to physical assault. So I isolated myself completely. I lost confidence in myself and in trust in others. I lost concentration at school, and I lost my joy of living. And I said everything to my parents, and they did what they could together with the school to try to help me, and so I was no longer alone. So today I would like to use my voice to speak out in favor of all of those who are suffering in silence. No one should be in that situation. Everyone should feel safe at school. A problem like school bullying must not be a rite of passage in the lives of young people. We must find solutions to prevent bullying. We must promote respect and tolerance, and this must be done right from the youngest age with pupils in order that they relate to others in a positive way. Now, I have evolved a lot since I was a victim, but there's much that I still have to do to be able to listen to others, and I'm sure that if we work on this together, we will succeed.
Greetings, respected delegates. My name is Shoptik Roy. I'm 16 years old and I live in New Delhi, India. I am a student of Tagore International School, which is a higher secondary school. I have faced constant bullying since the age of 5. When I was in kindergarten, I was bullied by some of my seniors who used to travel in my bus. They used to hit me and tease me just for the sake of fun and jokes. I could never report it to the authorities as I feared retaliation and escalation. But by the time I grew up, I gained a lot of confidence and I started to report the matter. I was fortunate to have my parents who encouraged me and helped me overcome this trauma. By the time I entered high school, I started to participate in a lot of activities. I started to stand up for the rights of others and I learned to say no. Bullying is a very serious issue which leaves deep scars in the mind of the victims. With the oncoming of the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a surge in cyberbullying, which is even more threatening. I strongly believe that every organization must have an anti-bullying body which tackles the problem as well as helps other students. With this, I would like to conclude with a very famous quote from Martin Luther King Jr. We must accept finite disappointments, but we should never lose infinite hope. Thank you.
Madame la directrice générale, chère Audrey Azoulay, mesdames et messieurs les ministres, et Madame Annette Gerlach, mesdames, messieurs, et chère Émilie aussi, et chère Chouti que nous venons d'entendre. Merci d'ailleurs pour ces témoignages, et merci à vous toutes et à vous tous d'être là pour ce moment que nous considérons comme très, très important. Cette conférence, Audrey Azoulay l'a rappelé, a lieu à un moment particulier pour la France mais aussi pour le monde, puisque s'agissant de la France, nous avons vécu il y a 3 mois un assassinat ignoble d'un professeur. Lorsque cet assassinat a eu lieu, c'est pas l'assassinat
of a teacher. That was a teacher killing not just of a French citizen, but of a French teacher. So it was an attack on knowledge itself. And that's very much in line with our subject today, because what really underpins the existence of UNESCO and those who fight for the good of education is that we believe in nonviolence. And we believe that exchanges of arguments are what count. You've heard that in the quote of Martin Luther King. And this intelligence, as we've seen in the statement by Emily, personal development can suffer greatly because of bullying. And we know the UNESCO can play a very important role in this respect. And that is why I would like warmly to thank UNESCO for having provided us with this support and allowing us to hold this conference today. Now, the role of social networks today is extremely important. It's decisive. Let's not forget that the assassination of Samuel Paty is not something that would have happened without the social networks. There was a call for violence on social networks that resulted in this extreme form of violence, the deportation of a teacher. And we're also experiencing a lockdown because of the sanitary conditions, and that results in the rate of bullying increase greatly. And we've had some initial results in combating bullying, but it's very difficult for us to combat cyberbullying. And so we must collectively to mobilize to combat cyberbullying on social networks. I'll come back to that. Now, be it in Europe, at the OECD, at UNESCO, or in France itself, we've had several meetings to try to make progress. And it is in that sense that that we need to become mobilized, as we did back in 2019 when we had the presidency of the G7. We set up this international coalition to combat school bullying. And at the time, Brigitte Macron, the wife of the president, joined us to make her contribution. At the end of this conference, you will see a video recorded message from her, which underscores how important she considers this to be. Now, this conference is possible thanks to the work of a number of countries and our political action, and really needs to concentrate on the good, the everyday good of our pupils at school. And of course, the evolution of French policy to combat bullying is very ambitious and innovative. In the last few years, we have put in place a number of experimental projects to try out new approaches, awareness raising of educational personnel, dedicated days such as this one, organizing a national competition, which we call No to Bullying. The what is called in the European Union a Safer Internet Day. So there are different angles of attack to reduce the scope of the phenomenon. So rather than describing this program at length, I will just mention the national program that we are launching today.
J'ai pas compris tout de suite ce qui était en train de m'arriver.
Mais ça a recommencé, tous les jours.
Au bureau, à la cantine.
Je voulais juste ne plus jamais devoir y retourner.
Ils étaient tous contre moi, mais quand j'ai enfin trouvé le courage d'en parler,
ils ont dit que ça allait passer. Que c'était des chamailleries entre copains d'école. J'en peux plus. J'ai peur que ça ne passe pas. C'est pas parce qu'on est petit qu'on a des petits problèmes.
Victime ou témoin, appelez le 30-20.
Et coupez. On a participé à un concours. On a fait un film sur le harcèlement. Je pense que tu connais. Et on a gagné. On a gagné ? On a gagné. Moteur. Silence, ça tourne. Le harcèlement, c'est quand on embête quelqu'un. Lundi, on se moque de lui. Il le montre du doigt. Mardi, il se fait mordre. Jeudi, il le griffe. Vendredi, il s'est fait pousser. Lundi, il le tape. Mardi, il l'insulte. Jeudi, il est en train de pleurer dans ses bras. Vendredi, je suis triste et je sais pas quoi faire. Je suis tout seul. J'ai peur. Et j'ai mal à la tête. Il y a un copain qui me dit que je suis grosse.
Ah ouais ? Et tu lui as dit quoi toi alors ?
Je pense que c'est vrai parce qu'il me le dit tout le temps. Ça fait mal aux autres, le harcèlement. Ça leur fait mal au cœur, ça leur rend triste et ça fait peur aussi. Si quelqu'un harcèle quelqu'un, il faut venir avec lui et aller le dire. Je voudrais devenir leur ami s'ils n'en ont pas. Tu viens jouer avec nous. Lundi, je travaille, j'apprends, je joue avec mes amis. Et mardi, je fais des expériences, j'ai confiance. La récréation, c'est trop bien. 1, 2, 3, c'est vrai. Jeudi, j'aime bien travailler. J'ai des amis, je lis des histoires. Je mange toujours des frites. J'ai plein de copines. Et vendredi, j'aime l'école. Tout le monde a le droit d'aimer l'école. Non au harcèlement.
Voilà.
So there you have it. So you can see this video illustrates our approach to combat bullying. That's to say, mobilize the youngest among us and get students of all ages behind this effort, because that's what we need. There are about 1,150 students that took part in this project. It's about tackling this at the root. And we have to make sure that not only young children, but adults are involved, that they're aware of the need for the fight against bullying to be included in training. What we want to do is make sure that everyone has confidence and trust in the system, and that everyone realizes we have to eradicate bullying from schools. So we are totally resolved to tackle this problem that we don't think is marginal or irrelevant. It's a big problem in schools. It's the exact opposite of what we want in training. We in France fight for the values of the Republic. That's to say, we want to teach children to live together, to respect each other, to enjoy school, and be happy in their differences. That's to say, those are the values of our Republic. So this event gives an discussion, but also sending out a signal to the world. And I'd be delighted to interact with all the ministers from whatever country so that we can support each other in this movement. This is why France sent out a call to put together a good conduct anti-bullying code. I think that's one of the main takeaways from this. So we have to have we also have to be very aware of the importance of social networks. There, the situation is not good, to be honest. It shouldn't be so hard to remove offensive content about a child. We need the right algorithms for that, and that is why we have to set ourselves the highest standards for these platforms, because they are vital in today's world. And how is this world of technology going to be made more humane? It's one of the challenges before us. Thank you for being here today, and I very much hope that this conference will have some specific outcomes and positive results for all children around the world. Thank you very much, Jean-Michel Blanquer. We hope to see you later. So, as you know, the 5th of November is the first International Day against bullying, violence and bullying at school, including cyberbullying. And the title is Together Against Bullying in School, because that's what you have to understand. We have to get everybody involved, all the stakeholders, so as to have an effective fight. So as you heard, it's Morocco, Mexico, and France that were behind this initiative. And before I go any further, let's give the floor to Esteban Moctezuma Barragan, Secretary of Education from Mexico. But before that, we will hear from Stefania Giannini, ADG for Education of UNESCO. You have the floor.
Greetings. On behalf of UNESCO, I'm so pleased that you could join with us today to celebrate the first ever UNESCO International Day Against Violence and Bullying at School, including cyberbullying. This historic day was created at the initiative of the governments of France, Mexico, and Morocco, and unanimously approved by all 193 member states at the 40th UNESCO General Conference in 2019. It will be commemorated each year on the first Thursday of November, a powerful symbol that collectively we express our commitment to prevent and address bullying. The theme for this year's International Day is Together Against Bullying in Schools. This theme serves to underscore that bullying, including cyberbullying, is the most prevalent form of school violence and infringes on children and adolescents' right to education and to health and well-being. This first ever International Day is a cause for celebration because it demonstrates the overwhelming commitment to address this serious issue, which for far too long has been neglected, unfortunately. It is also an occasion for us to share our knowledge, strengthen our collaboration and partnerships, and pledge for more investment to end school violence and bullying. Together, we can ensure that schools are safe and happy places in which all learners can thrive and reach their full potential.
Para México es muy importante participar en el primer día contra la violencia y el acoso en la escuela, incluso el ciberacoso. Es una oportunidad de reflexión, de compromiso y de acción ante conductas sociales inaceptables en los centros e instituciones de educación. En ellos conviven las generaciones más jóvenes de nuestros países y por tanto las más sensibles y entusiastas son el futuro de nuestras sociedades. Las escuelas, por ello, deben de ser espacios donde los educandos adquieran y practiquen un código de conducta respetuoso, pero no solo deben aprender de las lecciones, sino del ejemplo y del comportamiento de los mayores, de los maestros y de las maestras. En la escuela, las diferencias económicas, sociales y culturales no deben de ser motivo de prejuicios, discriminación o incluso violencia. La escuela está llamada a ser la herramienta más poderosa de armonización social. Celebro que este nuevo Día Internacional de la UNESCO haya sido apoyado por todos los miembros de la organización. Les pido que así como respaldaron firmemente esta propuesta de Francia, México y Marruecos, revisemos también las posibilidades a nuestro alcance para combatir el ciberacoso. Hoy es un día para hacernos mejores y para evitar cualquier tipo de violencia, de acoso o discriminación. Muchas gracias y un saludo de corazón desde México.
Merci beaucoup en direction.
Thank you very much to Mexico. I'd just like to point out that I have the same mask as the Mexican minister, which shows COVID is global.
More about effective national responses to bullying. Ce sont des ministres et des représentants de 4 pays, la Finlande, l'Italie, la France et l'Afrique du Sud, qui vont partager avec vous leur stratégie pour agir.
They will share with you their responses to this problem of bullying. But before I directly introduce the participants, we'll just see a quick UNESCO film celebrating this first International Day against violence and bullying at school. It's called Together Against School Bullying.
Amir is 10 and attends school in the Middle East. Instead of playing sports like the other boys, he prefers acting and writing poetry. Some of the boys laugh at him, telling him he's skinny and calling him a sissy. Things get worse when one of them picks on him. Soon, everyone is picking on him. Amir's teacher tells him it's a normal part of growing up. His father tells him to grow up and be a man. Around the world, 1 out of every 3 students is bullied by their peers. In many regions, physical bullying is the most common type of bullying, with 16% of bullied children saying they have been hit, kicked, shoved around, or locked in rooms. Far away, in Europe, 13-year-old Rani is experiencing a different kind of bullying. She recently moved there from Asia with her family. It feels as if her world has been turned upside down. School is taught in a language she doesn't understand, and she hasn't made any friends. Things can't get any worse until someone posts a hurtful text about her on social media, telling her to go back to her own country. The cyberbullying gets worse. Ethnicity, nationality, or color is the second most common reason for bullying. The most common reason is physical appearance. 16-year-old Kaya in Southern Africa is bullied for the way she looks every day. Her parents are poor and can't afford to buy her shoes or a new uniform. Every day she walks kilometers to get to school. It's not easy, but her dream of being a doctor helps her to stay motivated. Lately, some of the boys from her school have been making life difficult. They wait for her along the path, crowding around her and making rude comments about the way she looks. When she tells them to leave her alone, they just laugh. Over 15% of bullied students say they were made fun of because of how their face or body looks. Many students, especially girls, experience violence based on their gender in and around school. As bullying continues, many victims don't know who to turn to and become isolated and depressed. They find it difficult to concentrate during lessons and start missing classes or drop out of school altogether. 42% feel like an outsider at school. 63% feel anxious for tests, even if they are well prepared and score lower than their peers. 45% of them give up on their dreams to pursue formal education after school. Countries cannot achieve inclusive and equitable quality education for all if learners are being bullied at school. There is a way to change this. We can stop bullying by adopting a whole education approach where teachers, principals, administrative staff, students and parents all play a role in promoting a safe and supportive school environment. We need to ensure that all students, whether they are bullied or see others being bullied, understand the nature and consequences of bullying and know how to report it and respond to it. Teachers and other school staff need to understand what bullying is and step in or act every time bullying happens. Schools and classroom environments need to be positive spaces where learners are not just physically safe, but emotionally safe too, where classes are well managed and disciplined, and teachers and students enjoy healthy relationships. Support must be put in place for those who are affected. We all have a role to play to ensure a learning environment where Amir feels accepted by his peers, where Rani's classmates respect diversity, and where Kaya can pursue her dream to become a doctor. Let's stand together against bullying in school.
Stop bullying. This was a clear message from this UNESCO film. So, quelles sont donc les clés que la
So what are the key drivers for Finland, Italy, France and South Africa? What have they identified in order to devise their anti-bullying campaigns? Let's start with Northern Europe, part of the country that is famous for its excellent PISA results, which compares the national and global education systems. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you the Minister of Education of Finland, Ms. Li Andersson.
Finland is mentioned as a role model in the response to bullying and definitely as a pioneer, particularly with bystanders programs like Kiva, programs rolled over all your primary schools in Finland and adopted also in many other countries. What is the recipe? What are the key principles for Finland's success in implementing an anti-bullying program nationwide? It's up to you, Ms. Andersson.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the possibility to participate in this very important event. In Finland, we've had an extensive societal debate on how to tackle school bullying and violence in schools that has been going on for many years now. Our efforts here have been successful in many ways when we look at data around school bullying. But as we know, bullying is a complex social phenomena, and we definitely need to continue our efforts and also make sure that efforts against school bullying is a normal part of the everyday practices of every school in Finland. Our central issue in preventing bullying and violence is that education providers and schools are obliged to ensure a safe learning environment for all students. This means that education providers, schools cannot decide whether or not to intervene in bullying, but instead it is their legal duty to step in and take action as soon as they notice any kind of bullying. To tackle school bullying in an effective way, we need two main things. Firstly, we need good educational and pedagogical practices. And secondly, we also need sufficient resources, by which I mean adults who have time to focus on children and their needs. So it's very important to make sure that the schools have enough human resources to identify and intervene effectively as soon as disruptive behavior is identified. We've also, as been mentioned, have good experiences from the Kiva program, which is an anti-bullying program that was developed in the University of Turku with funding from the Ministry of Education and Culture. It's an evidence-based program, which means that the effectiveness of the Kiva program has been proven scientifically, and it offers a wide range of tools and materials for schools, for teachers to tackle bullying. And it has been developed by experts who have been studying the phenomena of bullying and its mechanisms for decades. No other bullying program has been studied as rigorously as the Kiva program has, both before and after the nationwide implementation. And the program has been shown to reduce both self and peer-reported bullying and victimization in a significant way. As we know, bullying is a group phenomenon, and thus the principal aim of the program is to prevent bullying before it even happens. By influencing group norms and building capacity to behave in a constructive manner in social interaction, children are encouraged to take responsibility for not supporting the bully, but their vulnerable peers. In addition to being preventive, Kiva is also interventive with clear guidelines on how to tackle bullying when it does take place. The Kiva program has proved to be an effective tool against bullying in Finland, but also outside of Finland. And as said, it's based on decades of research and based on what you could call three main elements: prevention, intervention, and monitoring the preventive actions, such as the Kiva curriculum, which are directed at all students and focused on preventing bullying. Of course, we are also continuing with different types of action, and this governmental term, we will also draw up an action plan to address bullying at school and to ensure safe schooling for all children and young people, which will include new actions implemented by this government. And we're also constructing this program in cooperation with different ministries, such as the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Social and Healthcare, thus showing that the government is working on a broad approach to ensure the safety and the well-being of all learners in all schools in Finland. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this great insight look of your politics in Finland. I'm turning right now to Mr. Lucia Azzolina, the Italian Minister of Public Education, because like Finland, Italy is also a kind of success story, but in a different way, because Italy actually adapted anti-bully programs that were developed in other countries, like the Finlandish Kiva program. What I would like to know is how you have to manage to encourage most schools to use these methods, since as much as I understood, it is not like in Finland, a legal duty, but it's absolutely free for every school to choose to participate in a program like this or not. Thanks very much. It's up to you, Lucia Azzolina.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Jean-Michel Blanquer and Audrey Azoulay for organizing this international conference, which allows an exchange of views at political level and with all the important stakeholders on the theme of school building. This first International Day Against Violence and Bullying at School gives a great opportunity to foster awareness and mobilization on this serious phenomenon. As highlighted in 2018 UNESCO report on school bullying, we must protect our students implementing effective anti-bullying programs, thus preventing its negative outcomes. This is in line with international human rights law, in particular the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We must teach our children and teenagers that they have the right to learn and develop in safe and healthy school environments, and we must also promote our values, in particular the respect for every human being. In Italy, although the phenomenon remains stable at a low level, there is a great sensitivity to the problem, and we are strongly committed to taking a stand against bullying in our schools. That result is due to our long experience in dealing with difficult contexts, such as in Naples or Genoa, where we have used a whole school approach and a whole community approach to fight early school leaving. We are well aware that educational failure and bullying are often the result of marginalization of vulnerable students that are living every day a situation of poverty and violence. The Italian pedagogical tradition, starting from Don Milani, is based on the idea that teaching means immersing ourselves in the context of those who have learning difficulties. So we are also aware that there are cultural differences in bullying behaviors and that anti-bullying programs should be adapted to each specific context. It is not a coincidence if in Italy we have adopted programs based on the whole school approach, such as the Kiva program or on peer involvement as the No Trap initiative. These approaches are fully in line with our vision that we can fight educational poverty and prevent bullying both through the involvement of students' parents, teachers, and the wider community, or working at peers level. With that in mind, over the last years, we have implemented policies aiming at providing a regulatory framework supporting schools in creating safe and positive environments where the reduction of bullying derives from a proactive involvement of the local communities. With the law 71 of 2017 and the subsequent national plan for prevention of bullying and cyberbullying, we have provided schools with financial resources and provisions which allowed the launch of a series of initiatives involving a great number of educational institutions and establishing a national network to fight youth discomfort. More concretely, we have decided to make available to schools, free of charge, also the Finnish Kiva program, that had proved to be one of the most successful models in reducing bullying, and that seemed particularly suited with some adjustments to the Italian context. Particularly appreciated by school communities have been the implementation of both universal actions of bullying preventions with students and the adoption of dedicated actions in case of specific harassment incidents. In this school year, despite the difficulties caused by the pandemic and thanks to the availability of online tools, we have still been able to organize a Kiva initiative in 6 Italian regions. Another best practice in the Italian education systems are peer-led programs, such as the No Threat initiative, including a peer-led online forum for students to discuss victimizations, where anonymity encourages Italian teenagers to disclose their difficult bullying experiences in the school environment. As complementary policy measures, all these programs have been supported by online teachers training on anti-bullying strategies and an awareness campaign with a dedicated helpline on safer and responsible internet use. But let me conclude saying that the success of the Italian anti-bullying approach also derives from the work of a concerted and coordinated inter-ministerial committee relying on experts in the field and the involvement of all school community stakeholders. That is why I believe that only by working together and comparing the effectiveness of different approaches and public policies, we will be successful in our action against bullying. Thank you for your attention.
Grazie mille vers l'Italie. Donc,
thank you so much. Grazie mille. We are now going to listen to Mr. Edouard Jeffrey, Director General for School Education at the Ministry of Education. Mr. Jeffrey, could you tell us more about the measures that were taken by the ministry over the past few years? And could you tell us more about the program which was implemented in 6 different schools in France, No to Bullying? Thank you. I am very pleased to see you all. Very pleased to meet with you on this topic, which is a topic of national importance in France and for a few years now. A few points I'd like to make before going into the program. The first point, I would like to say that this is a comprehensive approach when it comes to age range. It starts with very young children. We already have bullying incidents with very young children, and we have to act upon it. Second point, our action will only work if we can bring together all the stakeholders, teachers, parents, and youth themselves, and I will explain later how we have tried to engage with youth on this. Third point, it is an approach that must be sustainable in time and long term. It has to support students throughout their academic life, prevention, protection, and education. And it is on this foundation that in France, we built our action plan, which is stepwise. We have worked gradually on it. But what I'd like to share with you here is the legal framework on one hand, but also practical organization of this action plan. In 2019, we have established the legal right for every child to be able to go to school without any violence or bullying. It's not merely symbolic because it is the foundation on which we are able to work. Then we put in place the No to Bullying program, which builds on this holistic, comprehensive approach. And this is what is going to help us mitigate and decrease the situation of bullying. We started with 6 academies, so to speak, 6 out of 30, as a pilot exercise, and we will roll out and make this program general all over France at the beginning of the school year in 2021. This is a multifaceted program. First of all, what is important to know is that it is now part and parcel of school curriculum. There will be a time during which, in the school curriculum, they will hear about this topic, why it is not tolerated, not acceptable to bully a schoolmate simply because they are different. On the contrary, they must respect these differences. So this is the first aspect in terms of teaching and learning. The second aspect is listening. No child should be left alone in a situation of bullying, and bystanders neither. So whether you are a target or a bystander, there are hotlines in France that you can call. You can call for help. You can talk to someone, whether you are a victim or a bystander. There are two hotlines, because one of them is about bullying in general, and the second one is dedicated to cyberbullying specifically. Cyberbullying is a very specific situation, and it calls for a specific response. And that's why, for example, for this hotline, students and youth can call at later times of the day, for example. Thirdly, involving youth, engaging with youth. They have to become the champions of the fight against bullying. In all these schools, we have these champions, advocates against bullying. During classes or during recess time, they are going to act as mediators and truly convey this message and say why it is not acceptable to bully someone. Lastly, we have the dimension of preventing, listening to students, and so on and so forth. And this is where families come in. We have built a kit for families to help them detect these situations when they occur, but also help youth speak up when they see something or experience something that has instilled fear in them. And every year we will have a competition with a video. Our Minister Jean-Michel Blanquer showed this video earlier on, and it is a video that is made by the youth for the youth. Of course, this is possible only if the involved adults are trained, and all staff and all teams must be trained. And we have already seen positive results because we have already seen the numbers decrease. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you so much. Thank you for this presentation. We are somewhat late. We will listen to Miss Matsi Angelina Mocheka.
We have to know, in sub-Saharan Africa, who has a comprehensive education policy on bullying. That's already very good with a series of tools. However, if we look at the data, South Africa, the problem remains quite high. Could you tell us, please, about the main obstacles that South Africa is facing to implement comprehensive anti-bullying policies, and what you can do to overcome these obstacles? Thank you very much. It's up to you.
No, thank you very much, host, and also my greetings to all colleagues, including the Minister of France for hosting. Yes, indeed, as a country, we are confronted with high levels of violence generally, and those are taken into schools so that the level of violence in communities gets translated in our schools. And hence, we were forced to mobilize the society under general to be partners with us to confront issues of bullying and violence in our schools. So we are, as a country, as we said in our submission, that we have been forming a partnership with external bodies like your German Development Corporation, UNICEF, media monitoring, just to make sure that we have as many people as possible joining hands with government to form an action group or a network that helps us to fight the violence and prevention of child bullying. And our response really, as I say, has been mainly to ensure that we have a network that ensures that we have safety for our learners and can jointly with society fight bullying, gender-based violence, and all forms of other violence. Because as I say, the violence in communities gets translated into all forms of violence in schools. We find that in communities where there are high levels of poverty, high levels of disintegration or decadence in our societies, that also is carried into schools. So hence, as I say, our first approach was to form this network that helps us to work in a very coordinated way so that we can work with communities. The other thing that we have done, we've had to also use your e-platforms, because that has also begun to show another form of which exacerbates the bullying in our schools. That's why we had to develop e-safety guidelines to respond to incidents of bullying. We have developed a tool really and guidelines and trained teachers on the prevention and management of bullying, including cyberbullying and homophobic bullying, because that was also another issue. As you had seen in the tape around people with different sexual orientation, people who look different. Also in a country where racism also is a problem. So we do encounter areas of racial bullying, also where there's supposed to be integration. So what has really been making it difficult, as I say, it's the history of the country of racism, the history of the country where there are huge disparities between rich and poor, but there's also a history of a nation in construction, which really makes it, as we build other elements of building a new society, issues like bullying fall through the cracks. So what has been difficult really, it's mainly coordination, but making sure that we have peaceful communities which are able to instill values of peace, values of protection, and partnership and comradeship amongst learners and parents and communities themselves. And that's been a response. As I say, our main response really has been to form a network which will help schools to manage the scourge of violence and the scourge of bullying in communities, which, as I say, is both sociological, it's both economic, but it's just also simply issues of decadence in communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for giving some insight from this very specific problematic in South Africa, as you say, a country with racist history. Un facteur clé, soyons clairs aussi, pour... Non, pardon. D'abord, je voudrais remercier tous les panélistes.
I wanted to thank all panelists who participated in this first panel. I am going to speed up my pace. I wanted to thank South Africa, and I'll ask you to switch off your camera, please. So, of course, the main tool is to break the silence. And so I wanted you to meet Mr. Said Amzazi, Minister of Education of Morocco, one of the 3 countries who launched this initiative. I wanted to show you a short film from UNESCO, Stop Bullying, People Speak Out.
My name is Monica Mlauzi. I'm age 16. I'm a Zambian and I'm in grade 9. I've been bullied by my classmates in the community because I'm pregnant.
Et j'ai été confrontée à un moment de ma scolarité au harcèlement homophobe le plus particulièrement.
When I was in elementary school, first grade, because I looked boyish when walking to the ladies' room, I was stopped by a teacher. I was just too timid to explain I am no boy. From then on, I got constantly mocked and laughed at till I finished elementary school.
My first experience on bullying is that when I was in grade 5, some girls always teased me and always took my food.
Pues había un compañero pobre, una forma de decirlo. Tenía pocos recursos económicos y pues mis otros compañeros se creían superiores solamente por tener más posibilidades según ellos.
The consequences of bullying include children and young people finding it difficult to concentrate in class, missing classes, avoiding school activities, playing truant, or dropping out of school altogether. The experience of being bullied has a demonstrable adverse impact on academic achievement and intellectual and personal development, as well as future education and employment prospects.
J'étais en CE2 et une bande de filles en avait après moi.
Elle me détestait. Elle me répétait sans cesse que j'étais nulle, que j'étais bête, que j'étais moche. Et j'ai fini par y croire.
Conocido algunos casos de acoso escolar. Publicaba frases e incluso imágenes con contenido ofensivo hacia su compañera. Logramos utilizar este caso ya que había sido muy conocido por todos sus compañeros a través de las redes sociales. Logramos utilizarlo como base para orientarlos en base al respeto.
My daughter was a victim of bullying because she was pregnant. She received bullying from friends at school. We came together with teachers as well as the peers. We made them understand she's back in school and the bullying has stopped.
I recognize bullying as a worldwide phenomenon, and I myself have been subjected to it as a victim in my school days. So when my son had approached us, sharing his experiences, it was important for us to provide him with the needed mental and emotional support, and that's very important.
We need to empower our students to fight against this menace. Every institution needs to set up societies or committees which can help students in case they face any issue.
We all wanted to take action.
So we formed a school club called Bully Busters,
with many other students,
where we don't have to be the same.
And because we're many, our voices were heard.
Speak up, be yourself.
It makes a difference.
La méthode PICAS, méthode de la préoccupation partagée, est une méthode où l'élève est amené lui-même à trouver des suggestions afin d'aider l'élève victime. On le responsabilise sans le juger. C'est le no blame, no shame.
We want to have teacher counselors who are able to handle bullying issues. We are saying, do not allow teasing, do not allow bullying.
Yo no he sufrido de acoso escolar, pero es un tema que nos preocupa en nuestro centro educativo, ya que diferentes niños y niñas son víctimas de violencia y no se dan cuenta. Creemos que es normal que un niño o un grupo de niños molesten a otros niños, pero cuando veamos esto debemos de contarle a nuestros padres y maestros, porque si no se corrige a tiempo el niño abusivo va a crecer y va a ser un hombre abusivo. Recordemos que es responsabilidad de los padres educar a sus hijos sin violencia y que las escuelas tomen las medidas para prevenir y detectar y combatir esta amenaza para nosotros los niños y niñas.
Children are the future. They are agents of change within their own schools and communities, and they rightly continue to demand more urgent action on these important issues.
I remain hopeful in our power to cooperate as an international community and take fast, evidence-based actions to support our youngest generations all around the world.
Il faut joindre à l'école avec des enfants.
Mesdames et messieurs, honorable assistance.
Ladies and gentlemen, following the instructions of our king, the Kingdom of Morocco attaches key importance to fighting bullying in all its forms. Similarly, the National Observatory of the Rights of Children under Her Highness the Princess Almeria has a responsibility for monitoring and implementing the United Nations Convention on Children's Rights. Our ministry, drawing on the results and diagnosis carried out with UNESCO in 2012, has brought in a strategy including fighting violence at school. And as part of this implementation, the framework law in education and a number of action programs have come to light. For example, there's the National Observatory for Fighting Violence at School, made up of representatives of different ministerial departments and civil society. We have set up listening posts to receive complaints, and there's the MASAT system, which collects reports of school violence and categorizes them and We have worked with UNPD, UNDP, and others to work to increase civil behavior. So there's no doubt that fighting bullying has to start early in education. This is a world scourge that we have to scourge. Therefore, we need a global charter of good conduct, fighting bullying and cyberbullying of minors. I wish you all the best in your debates here, and I thank UNESCO for taking this initiative.
So let's move on to panel number 2, key operational recommendations to tackle school bullying effectively. Donc cette fois-ci, nous allons surtout entendre des spécialistes qui se penchent souvent pendant des années vers des...
Now we're going to hear some specialists who have worked for years. There's a lot of upstream work to organize such a major worldwide conference that you're following in direct. We have 50 worldwide experts who participated. That was all run by the steering committee set up by UNESCO and the French Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport. So we'll have France, Chile, Austria participating in this second panel, as well as a representative of the European Commission. But let me turn immediately to the chairperson of the French Society, Dr. Nicole Catili-Moravi. Thank you very much for having found the time to join us. And researchers have been wondering how one can combat bullying, what the right definition of bullying is. And you, Dr. Kathleen, you stress the concepts of context and network. You say that bullying and cyberbullying take place within a given network, the educational community, within the school, and therefore one needs to work on that social and institutional context. And why do you stress so much this concept of context? So please try to be as brief as you can, because we're running a bit out of time. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. So I shall speak in the name of the French Committee of Experts on this issue. I'm a pediatric psychiatrist. I'll start my statement by saying that in the field, when we started being worried about this phenomenon in France back in 2011, Jean-Michel Blanquer has mentioned that, we've been confronted with certain difficulties. Like many others, we went to the Amrius definition. We have to thank him a lot. He's no longer with us, but that Swedish-Norwegian professor has really set out a good definition. But the three criteria that he mentioned, the aggressive intention, the repetition, and the dominant relationship, convince some people that bullying is an issue that concerns two people, the bullier and the victim. But we quickly realized, in fact, that this sets aside completely something that I've referred to together with others as a situational profile. There are certain contexts in which bullying occurs. It is normal for children to become socialized through interactions that they have with the group. And can I trust so-and-so? Can I have some domination over someone else? Should I be submissive to someone else? Now, all of this is natural. The trouble is that the responses applied are a bit simplistic, a bit binary. Adults must intervene. You have the right to put those questions, but not to go beyond a certain red line. If you're not happy about what someone is doing or the way they look, what have you. So yes, that's natural, but that shouldn't turn into physical action, and that's where adults need to intervene. So a situational profile in which adults have a lot of responsibility is something that needs to be looked at. So in France, we've stressed this concept a lot, and that will no doubt lead us perhaps to modify, to change the definition, to develop it, because there's a lot of cyberbullying taking place on social networks, which is a bit different. And the fact that something is disseminated massively, even if it's only once on a platform, that can be as deleterious, as painful, sometimes even as criminal, as a repetition face to face. So France wants to stress that aspect. And as our minister has said, Jean-Michel Blanquer, you have to start from a very young age and talk about, to talk about aggressive intention in a child of 5, 6, or 7, well, responses are very impulsive. I'm a pediatric psychiatrist, and I understand that. It's not reflected. So if you want to do things at a very young age, you have to teach young children that mutual help, mutual assistance is much more important and much more valuable than confrontation. We need to teach children to cooperate. They need to become agents, of course. So this goes in the direction of taking the bullying situation in a context of network and not just as an issue of interaction between two individuals. Thank you very much, Nicole Kathleen. That was extremely interesting. And now we'll hear from other specialists who've been working on this issue for many years.
From the UNESCO Chair on Tackling Bullying in School and Cyberspace. And he's also the director of Irish National Anti-Bullying Research and Resources of the Centre of Dublin City University in Ireland. So, James O'Higgins, Norman, one of your key recommendations you find together with the Scientific Council is that the countries should use a whole education approach to reduce bullying and cyberbullying. It's identified like this is a key element. It is not a singular, separated action we need, but a whole educational approach. Can you tell us more about these components, please? It's up to you, James O'Higgins.
Thank you, Annette, and greetings to everybody from Dublin. Yes, we worked with the panel of experts and with our parallel scientific committee in France, and we realized that this network of relationships that Nicole was referring to a moment ago is very important for the school as a whole, but in terms of how a school tackles bullying and cyberbullying. And so we talk about a whole education approach, which situates the school not just within its own self, but also within the wider community, within the wider education community, within wider society, and all of the technologies that are around that support all of these different relationships. And so we have identified 9 core elements that we believe should be at the center of a whole education approach. And these elements are all of equal importance in the view of the scientific committee. First of all, we recommend that there should be strong political leadership with robust legal and policy frameworks. And this conference today illustrates that many countries are now taking this issue very seriously, and that there is strong political leadership emerging across the globe on school bullying and cyberbullying. Secondly, we recommend that curriculum, learning, and teaching should all be designed to promote a caring ethos, a caring school climate. Bullying is an absence of care, and so if we design our schools to be caring places in terms of what we teach and how we organize them, this will make a very significant impact on school bullying and cyberbullying. It is also equally important to have reporting mechanisms for students who are affected by bullying and cyberbullying, together with support and referral services, not just for those who are targets of bullying, but also for children and young people who engage in bullying behavior. They equally need support and help. We also recommend that students are put at the center of all of these initiatives to address bullying and cyberbullying. Students have agency, students have rights, and all of these rights are enshrined in the UN Convention and other important documents. And we should not be organizing and trying to address bullying unless we are talking to and listening to those who are affected by it most of all. We went on then to recommend that there needs to be monitoring of school bullying and also evaluating the responses that are being made in the schools. And this can be within a school, there needs to be monitoring systems, but also across the education system in each country, there needs to be an observatory that is calculating the ongoing situation in relation to bullying and the responses that are being made to it. Next, we identified the need for training and support for teachers. addressing bullying, and positive classroom management. And when we say positive classroom management, we mean a caring school classroom. Then we talked about the importance of a safe psychological and physical school and classroom environment. Children need to feel safe. Parents need to know that their children are safe when they come to school. And this is an important core component within a whole education approach. Then we talked about the involvement of all stakeholders in the school community, particularly parents. All too quickly, we always rush in as teachers and as other school staff to try and sort these problems out. But parents need to be equally involved in this process. And finally, collaboration and partnership between the education sector and a wide range of other partners in government, NGOs, academia, and digital platforms will be required if we are to have a whole education approach to school bullying.
Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry for your coughing. I hope you will feel better. Thank you so much. And I felt that you rushed a little bit. Thanks so much, because we need this for the time. Just to let know everybody here who is listening to us today, you can find all these 9 recommendations on a wonderful document who is available since today on the page of the French National Ministry of Education. So don't worry, you don't have to write it down. You will find all of this sur le site de l'UNESCO et du ministre français de l'Éducation.
It's available on the UNESCO site and on the site also of the French Ministry of Education. Thank you for switching off your camera in Dublin. We'll move on now to Professor Christian Berger from the Université Pontificate Catholique du Chili. Yes, we have someone from Chile, as I said, is the outside.
Educational approach is to ensure the school environment is safe and supportive. Please, Professor Berger, can you tell us more what specific strategies and action should be taken to ensure this part of the recommendation? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Annette, and thanks everyone for this opportunity. Well, bullying is possible in contexts where individuals feel unsafe, isolated, and imply fear and distrust for them. So by contrast, the evidence is clear in showing that contexts that enhance a sense of belonging, that are supportive and established interpersonal relationships based on respect and care, decrease the probability of bullying to happen and increase nurturing and caring experiences. So at least 2 actions at 2 different levels should be taken consistently with a whole education approach that James was presenting. First, school principals and boards should display a democratic leadership by being inclusive, receptive, and respectful to different perspectives. A democratic leadership includes the recognition of all actors of the educational system as significant and the consideration of their perspectives and suggestions. It also implies establishing as a community clear rules and structure. At the classroom level, teachers should also use democratic teaching styles and classroom management, therefore creating safe environments, fostering positive relationships between students and also between themselves with all the members of the school community. So the respectful and caring relationships should be modeled at all levels of the school ecology. Bullying is not a student's problem. Bullying is a relational phenomenon that includes the whole educational system. And therefore, schools should assure that they provide instances and resources such as qualified teachers and staff that can embrace students and be emotionally available for them.
Thank you so much. This is so interesting, Professor Berger. Maybe some very specific examples can you give us from your Chile school and environment, how you can implement this?
Sure. So as an example, we recently carried out a study focusing on homophobic bullying, that is the use of sexual orientation as a motive for discriminating others, right? And in this study, we focus on factors that would increase the likelihood of homophobic bullying situations to be reported by the students. And the logic here is that recognizing and reporting bullying is a very relevant step to address it. In our study, we found that when students perceive the existence of clear and explicit anti-bullying policies, they are more likely to report bullying situations. Interestingly, this effect was explained by the role of teachers and staff who in these schools made less homophobic remarks themselves and were more likely to intervene, therefore building trust in their students. So these findings underscore the need for schools to have explicit policies against bullying. And in the same line, teachers and school staff should censor immediately any form of discrimination or abuse and be very conscious about their comments and behaviors. Creating trustful and respectful relationships should be a central goal in any educational context.
Thank you so much for this point of view and this very interesting things we could learn from Chile, and I'm happy to know that's already the day in Chile too and not the night. Thank you so much. So we will jump to another part of the world. We go to Australia this time to meet Dr. Soko Yoneyama. She is Senior Lecturer in Asian Studies, University of Adelaide in Australia, but she also conducted extensive researches on bullying in Japan, her home country. So very welcome to you, Dr. Yoneyama. Teachers, we heard this already a little bit, are also key in this important fight against school bullying. With what specific strategies and actions should be taken into consideration to push up the role of teachers to the full play to prevent and address school bullying? Please, the word is to Dr. Soko Yoneyama. And please.
Thank you very much, Annette. Thank you very much, Annette, and konnichiwa from Japan. Let me talk about Japan first. Japan has an excellent bullying prevention law, but it has not been very effective because most teachers are simply too busy to notice or handle bullying. Their working hours are 40% longer than the international average. So teacher support needs to include measures to reduce their workload. So the Japanese example shows that the whole education approach, teacher training and support must be looked at in the broader context of their work conditions. So this is my first point. My second point is that to prevent bullying, it is crucial to train teachers so that they can promote student-centered learning and teaching and create a caring classroom climate. For instance, train them how to use student-centered activities which help students build confidence and self-esteem, which in turn helps create a more inclusive class environment that deters bullying. My third point is that to address bullying, it is essential to train and support teachers so that they can recognize it and intervene when bullying occurs. For that purpose, pre- and in-service training focused on bullying is important so that teachers have practical knowledge about how to recognize bullying and how to deal with it with reference to existing policy frameworks and guidelines. This could, for instance, include role plays of specific cases, plus information about whom to talk to first within the school, what questions to ask to whom, and how to communicate with guardians. A clearly established support system for teachers who have noticed bullying is also essential so that they don't feel isolated. For instance, a mentoring system, a clearly laid out responsibilities of school leadership, the presence of an on-site specialist, and easy access to a school counselor. So in other words, the whole education approach should work to support teachers so they can create a caring and anti-bullying school environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this very interesting insight. I'm so sorry that the teachers in Japan has to work so much.
We now can move on to our third vessel. So before that, we have Henrietta Fore, Executive Director of UNICEF, who will be talking on behalf of the Global Safe to Learn campaign to end violence in schools.
On behalf of UNICEF, welcome everyone. This is an important meeting on an important subject. Every child deserves to be safe to learn, no matter where they are or how they learn. No child should ever feel a sense of dread when they arrive at school or a temporary learning space, or when they join their virtual classrooms. The Safe to Learn initiative is all about coming together to end violence in and through schools and other learning environments. And it unites key partners in education, health, child protection, and violence prevention to develop solutions to what is truly a global problem. Today is the first International Day Against Violence and Bullying at School, including cyberbullying. It shines a light on what is one of the most common forms of violence against children in school and in cyberspace, especially now when COVID-19 has closed schools and moved learning online or to other media. Whether in the schoolyard, online, or elsewhere, bullying can have serious and long-lasting impact on children's lives. It can lead to emotional and mental and physical health problems, and it can affect children's learning outcomes. Bullying is rooted in the same power and social dynamics as other forms of violence against children: poverty, gender inequalities, discrimination, exclusion. But we also know how to address it and even prevent it from happening in the first place. More broadly, the pandemic has provided a unique opportunity to reimagine these programs for the future. As schools begin to reopen, UNICEF and other organizations involved in the Safe to Learn Coalition urge all governments to endorse the Safe to Learn Call to Action, a practical 5-point framework to end violence in schools. And we call on governments and the private sector to join forces to increase investments and develop innovations to prevent and respond to all forms of violence in schools and online. Every child deserves every chance to learn, thrive, and pursue their dreams. As ministers, governments, experts, NGOs, and UN agencies, let's join forces to bring this vision to life. Let's use this extraordinary moment in history to reimagine safer schools free of violence and bullying. So thank you, and have a great meeting.
Je me tourne donc. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. So now we move on to our third and last panel, how to tackle cyberbullying more effectively. This time we have Canada, Singapore, United Kingdom, Argentina, and the European Commission. We will be hearing their viewpoints, and doubtless they will give us greater insight into this. Well, let me go first to Canada. Mr. Jean-François Berger, Minister of Education of Quebec, qui représente également. So Canada is also going for a global approach. You have organized several initiatives. So could you please give us a few examples of programs to combat cyberbullying in Canada? And thank you very much for getting here a little bit so that we can perhaps be through by 3. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me this very kind invitation. I'm very delighted to be in this forum. In particular, I'd like to thank the organizing countries. You quite rightly talked about the programs like NetBasel and others that we have set up. And at the very beginning, we heard from one of our young Canadians who gave an excellent explanation of the dangers that unfortunately exist with bullying and cyberbullying. And there are foundations doing excellent work in Quebec and Canada and elsewhere in this area. I would say that to effectively combat bullying and cyberbullying, above all, there are 4 things that are vital. I think we need a legal basis that is very clear and very robust. Obviously, you can run awareness-raising campaigns, advertising campaigns. It's important to mobilize people, but at the same time, you need a legal grounding for all this. So that they can process complaints properly and implement programs. In 2012, we introduced a law against bullying, intimidation, violence in school, and includes cyber intimidation also. But we also need to give our children digital education. And in this sense, I would say that we're not yet where we want to be. We tried to correct that with further legislation in 2019. And one of the things we set was targets in the digital filter. That's important, but you also need to train teachers and all school stakeholders. Obviously, we need to train existing teachers and trainee teachers along these lines. And we need to look beyond the school. When you talk about cyberbullying, this means that we're talking about things that happen not necessarily within school walls. So it's all of society that needs to be modeled. And we need to get parents involved. We need to inform, train, sensitize, and equip parents to play a role in the education of their children, because, as they say, cyberbullying doesn't happen within the classroom, but outside. So it's a vast project, and we have done a huge amount. We realize humbly there's still a long way to go. Thank you so much for this forum, which gives us an excellent opportunity to take forward this combat. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rebecca. And I like the way you say sometimes bullying, sometimes intimidation. It's a very good way of expressing it. So now let's carry on around the world so that we can tackle cyberbullying. And we move on to Singapore. We have Anita Lowe.
Community Services. This is an NGO based in Singapore, and they are implementing especially an initiative called Touch Cyber Wellness. So it's very particular about cyberbullying, who is definitely one of the greatest problem. Another program you do is Power of Zero. And please, Anita Lowe, you will explain us. Power of Zero is a global campaign that aims to promote digital civility and prevent cyberbullying, exactly what we are talking about. What it is, why it is so important to work in your eyes with very young children already about the cyberbullying. It's up to you.
Touch Cyber Wellness is a community service in Singapore, and we have been working in the area of cyber wellness education, intervention, and advocacy for 20 years. In 2016, we started our preschool cyber wellness education, and we are very honored to be able to partner Power of Zero to launch the global campaign in Singapore. Touch Cyber Wellness and Power of Zero believe that it is important to work with the young children aged 8 years old and below to help them to understand and tackle cyberbullying from the beginning, from a very young age. There are 3 reasons why we want to work with the children 8 years old and below. The first reason is because at this stage of their life, the parents' involvement is the highest compared to the teenage years. And to that extent, Power of Zero has developed materials that parents can download. Power of Zero envision a world where there is zero hate, zero violence, and zero bullying. And we want parents to be able to teach this to the children at home, at your own pace, and in the comfort of your own room. The second reason why we want to work with the very young children is because our children are being exposed to online activities and the mobile gadgets at a very young age now. With the early exposure, there is an increased risk of online challenges such as cyberbullying. At the stage when they are developmentally receptive, we want to help them to build protective factors that will enable them to deal with these challenges or unpleasant experiences. And these protective factors are in the form of social emotional skills. For example, inclusiveness, resilience, connection, and emotional regulation. These are just 4 examples out of the 12 social emotional skills that Power of Zero advocate. And we believe that children, if they, from young, can learn this from their parents, they will be on a very strong foundation to begin their online citizenship and participate online meaningfully. The third reason why we feel it is important to work with children so young is because we believe that this investment that we are doing today is transformative in their life. We know that the early years predict later successes in education and also their general happiness and well-being. And we want to ensure that the next generation is able to manage the challenges online from a very, very young age to enable them to enjoy the internet and everything related to it.
Thank you so much to Singapore, and I think you're so right. We have to focus on the very young children to prevent this problem. Thank you so much. We will continue in the NGO world to turn ourselves now to the United Kingdom to meet Martha Evans, the director of the Anti-Bullying Alliance. So it is a group and of organizations who get mobilized together to supporting and learning and sharing best practice, to raising awareness and also deliver programs. So please, Martha Evans, can you explain us in this? We focus right now on cyberbullying, and we would like to know what specific strategies or actions are you taking to prevent and address cyberbullying in the United Kingdom more specifically. United Kingdom, it's up to
So in the past 10 years, we've come to better understand the relationship between face-to-face bullying and online bullying. Schools have a better understanding of their experiences that young people have. However, it does present some challenges. So our government's research shows that children who have relationships with their parents, who feel safe with their community, and most importantly, those who have positive feelings about schools are less likely to be bullied online. And as such, where schools talk about bullying online as well as face-to-face bullying and work to teach children about online safety, they tend to do better to tackle bullying. There was research by Dieter Book in Warwick University in 2017 that helped us change the way that we see bullying, online bullying happening. And what it showed was that in a vast majority of cases, bullying happens first in school and then tends to go online. It's quite rare to see online bullying happening in isolation without face-to-face bullying also happening. It also showed that bullying is generally perpetrated by people who are known to their victims and not strangers. And what this showed us is that we can't tackle online bullying in schools without also considering our approach to face-to-face bullying, and because they're so intrinsically interlinked. So the best approaches appear to involve empowering victims, supporting bystanders and choosing positive action when we see bullying, and open communication with children and young people about their activity online. Our government funded whole school programme, which is called All Together and has been independently evaluated, incorporates online bullying within it. We have free online training for school staff covering online bullying, and that's been taken by over 20,000 participants. We find it really important to incorporate the groups that research shows are much more likely to experience online bullying, including disabled children and those who are LGBT, plus also some race and faith minority groups such as Gypsy Roma traveller communities. The government's recently included online safety, relationships and bullying in the new curriculum subject called Sex and Relationships and Health Education. And we hope this will make a big difference in how schools will deal with online bullying, as we tend to see better outcomes with schools that cover this within their curriculum. We've conducted lots of research around the experiences of children on online platforms, and they felt that there has been a lot of improvements recently in the ways that particularly the big social media platforms have dealt with bullying reports online. But they were clear that much more needed to happen, and that technology companies need to be clearer about the behaviours that is and isn't acceptable, to act swiftly online, and to be transparent about what types of bullying is actually going on their platforms.
Thank you so much. You're so right, absolutely. And the platforms definitely have to be in the team to fight this terrible thing. Thank you so much to the great to United Kingdom. I'm very happy to introduce you now to Ms. Themis Christofidou. She is Director General of the DG Education, Youth, Sports and Culture of the European Commission. So can you please tell us what the European Commission did to prevent and address cyberbullying within the EU borders?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Monsieur le ministre Jean-Michel Blanquet, chère directrice générale de l'UNESCO Audrey Azoulay, mesdames et messieurs. The European Commission welcomes the efforts of...
La Commission européenne se félicite des efforts consentis par la présidence française.
Bullying can seriously undermine a student's well-being, academic performance, and future. The numbers reveal the shocking reality. Today, 1 in 3 internet users is a child, and up to 40% of minors report that they are or have been subjected to some form of cyber harassment. This is an issue that can and has to be addressed. Today's conference is a great opportunity to mobilize governments, education professionals, and stakeholders to fight all forms of bullying and violence in and around school. It is an opportunity to bring policy and practice together. Within the EU's work on education, we have addressed bullying mainly through promoting more inclusive education and through reducing early school leaving. The Commission's recent communication on achieving a European education area by 2025 puts strong emphasis on the need to boost inclusiveness by supporting well-being at school, by addressing bullying, sexual harassment, and the problems of gender stereotypes. We will build on the work carried out so far, such as the European Toolkit for Schools. This offers concrete ideas and support to schools and their partners on how to respond quickly and appropriately to bullying and promote a more inclusive learning environment. The new Erasmus program will also maintain its strong support for projects that target schools, youth cooperation and exchanges, aimed at raising awareness about bullying and cyberbullying. Already, more than 300 projects are funded under Erasmus, empowering teachers, parents, and students to address this serious issue. Today, we live in a more and more digital world, bringing us great benefits, but equally giving rise to serious problems. Cyberbullying is one of the horrendous side effects of the advent of online technology and social media. Bullies can hide behind a screen, anonymous, while exerting unimaginable harm. Online technology opens up a new, very public and very impactful channel available 24/7 to harass and to humiliate. It is crucial that we equip our students and citizens with the digital competences to be able to protect themselves and to protect others from possible dangers in digital environments. We need to make sure students are aware of behavioral norms and know-how while using digital technologies and while interacting in such environments. They need to be vigilant, learn how to prevent cyberbullying and how to face it if it ever happens to them. All these aspects are key elements of the recently adopted European Commission's Digital Education Action Plan. Our ambition is to create a high-performance digital ecosystem and instill the necessary digital competences at all stages of education and training for citizens of all ages. More widely, the EU is involved in activities aimed at making a digital future safer. I cannot but mention the important work of the European Union and its member states on Safe Internet for Children and the Better Internet for Kids portal, which shares practice on combating ills such as cyberbullying, sexting, and grooming. The challenge for policymakers is to ensure we remain acutely aware of the dramatic impact of cyberbullying and seek out every opportunity for using policy and practice in a joined-up way to tackle it. We appreciate the efforts made by France to draft the proposed Code of Conduct, which effectively joins up these fields for action. The European Commission will gladly share and raise awareness of the code in our working groups. We will encourage member states to follow it. We are keen to learn more about new approaches from practitioners and other stakeholders from various countries, so that we can fine-tune our approach to this terrible problem of contemporary society and so that we can tackle it jointly.
Absolutely.
So that we can link policy and practice. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. It is so good to hear that the Digital Education Action Plan will cover the period until 2027. Thank you so much. You just talked about sexual bullying and grooming, and this is exactly what Mr. Nicolas Alfredo Trotta will talk about, Minister of Education of Argentina. Please tell us, how do you address this very particular part of cyberbullying in your country, Argentina? Thank you so much also for the European Commission.
Yes, thank you very much for your question. Hello to everyone. I greet my fellow minister from the G7 and other countries, the General Director, and Ms. Brigitte Macron. I also want to greet the experts in the problems of males at school, the students, teachers, and the audience that is following us from the different platforms. In particular, I want to talk about this matter and thank the French Minister of Education, Jean-Michel Blanquer, for the invitation. Today, November 5th, 2020, we commemorate the first International Day Against Violence and Bullying at School, including cyberbullying. It's a day that commits and challenges us, but in particular that put us on alerts about the ways in which this issue should be addressed every day of the year. At each latitude, recognizing the rights of girls, boys, and youngsters. I welcome this initiative to incorporate cyberbullying on the world agenda and promote spaces for reflection and accompaniment on education, which allows more inclusive and free of violence schools for all kids. In this sense, we know that education and the responsibility of transmitting the basic premises of all democracy, the right to have new rights, the possibility of pointing out an injustice and transform it in an equalitarian sense, as well as making each classroom a space to eliminate all kinds of violence and social inequality. From the Ministry of Education that I lead, we are convinced of the relevance of the link between scientific research and the commitment of educational authorities when it comes to fighting and combating bullying and cyberbullying at school. This time, I want to share you the Social Compact for National Campaign for Awareness and Prevention Against Grooming, which we carry out from the Ministry of Education and Justice also in Argentina. Grooming is the deliberate action of an adult to sexually harass a minor through the use of internet. It is always committed by an adult who, for sexual purpose, seeks to establish a personal encounter to carry out sexual abuse with physical contact, achieve recruiting for sexual exploitation purposes, and or obtain material for commercialization in sexual exploitation networks. They usually generate a fake profile in a social network, chat room, in others, acting as if he or she were a boy or a girl, seeking to generate a relationship of trust. Grooming was incorporated as a crime in the Argentine Criminal Code in 2013. This law established penalties ranging from 6 months to 4 years in prison for the crime of grooming. As of this incorporation, those who, by means of electronic communication, telecommunication, or any other data transmission technology, will contact a minor with the purpose of committing any crime against the sexual integrity of the same, can be judged and punished for the crime of grooming. Since then, work has been carried out at the national and provincial level on the subject because the impact of grooming on our childhood is enormous, taking into account that we are talking about girls, boys, and youngsters. We must never forget that they are subjects of law who are often in vulnerable situations, which implies actively interviewing for the protection of committed as all the guaranteed their rights and comprehensive matters. Therefore, this agreement in particular includes government, agency, legislators, the private sector, media, NGOs, involved all in this issue. This agreement has many objectives: strengthen the communication of the campaign through actions, tools, training, publication, and innovation spaces for co-creation, promote an effective coordination between companies, government, and civil society to jointly address the prevention, detection, and reporting of grooming on children and youngsters, provide a critical and sensitive reflection that influences the public agenda and helps the different actors identify the role for the public good, promote actions aimed to generating instance of awareness towards society. I want to deepen some ideas. We are living in an exceptional, unprecedented, and transitory moment, which will undoubtedly leave marks on society and, of course, on the ways of doing schools, with unknown dimensions at this moment, which transcends borders and challenges us as a humanity. It's a moment that sustains and deepens the existence educationally inequalities, which forces us to recognize the limits of any strategy of pedagogical continue that, of course, does not replace the face-to-face school, but pursues its objectives. In this sense, it is essential to sustain the link between schools and family, and the role of government as warder of the right to education for all boys and girls. This context forces us to be even more conscious of the new forms that bullying between peers is present and develops, observing the new language of young people and proposing new forms of comprehensive approach in this regard. In this sense, the school is a fundamental agent in the process of socialization and development of children and adolescents, teaching them to respect and value differences, as well as to resolve conflicts in a non-violent way. For this reason, as Minister of Education, we design and strengthen political education and pedagogical proposals that work in this direction. To conclude, from the Argentine Republic, we strongly support this initiative that, around the fight against school bullying, have demonstrated effectiveness in the public policy level and the promotion of good educational practices. And I congratulate the realization of this conference to advance in the coordination of actions and in the assembly of common purposes that allow us to have a horizon free of this discrimination in our schools. Thank you very much, and take care, all of you, in this difficult moment that our world is trusting.
Thank you so much for this passionate intervention from Argentina, Mr. Trotter. Without further ado, nous allons tout de suite pour la dernière partie de notre conférence.
We are now moving on to the last part of our conference. We will have Mr. Jean-Michel Blanquer and Madame Stefania Giannini, because they will be launching a call, and you have the floor, Mr. Minister. Thank you. We are reaching the end of this very insightful conference. Thank you all for your contributions, and once again, thank you to UNESCO. I can observe that cyberbullying is recognized as a very serious threat by everyone because it intensifies and magnifies the nefarious effects of bullying. And confinement with the children spending so many hours in front of the screens has exacerbated the problem. So we must act. And what we've just heard during this conference shows us that we can be proactive. We can act at the national level, of course, but we will be truly effective if we act on the global level. So a few questions that need a response. How can we truly act on accountability? The second issue is that of anonymity. Can it still be accepted that bullies online can hide behind fake accounts and anonymity? And I think that everything that you've said starts responding to that question. We know for years now that school plays a very important role, along with parents, in the fight against cyberbullying, but we will be able to see results only if we work with internet providers and operators. The Ministry of the Interior in France is working with the main agents to fight against the posting and publication of hate speech and messages online. And we would like to launch a call for an ethical use, responsible use of social media. Today, here we are, 20 or so ministers of education. I see Argentina, Costa Rica, Croatia, Spain, Estonia, Greece, Luxembourg, Morocco, Mexico, etc. The Slovak Republic, Slovenia, Tunisia. And maybe I've forgotten some of you, but I see that we are a very great number of ministers gathered here today. And we are going to launch this call together, knowing that if we stand united, if we stand together, we will be more effective. This launch will be supported by UNESCO. It is a call that calls for a more responsible use, that calls for coordination between these platforms. We call for more transparency, more action from businesses. We want to see principals and school directors who can act, who can call a telephone number when they see this type of incident. This type of event, this conference should not be a once-off event. We want to have a long-term commitment in order to find a solution to this issue. Our populations are waiting for that. This is a true poison for children's lives and for their families. I wanted to thank you for your commitment, and I hope that we will be able to work together for very concrete actions. And to finish off this first day, we will listen to Ms. Brigitte Macron, as well as other celebrities who have pre-recorded a video for us. And I'm sure that others will also join this fight so that we can finally and effectively tackle this issue. Thank you very much.
La parole, surtout j'espère que votre appel soit entendu le plus largement possible dans le monde. Je passe donc la parole à Stefania Giannini, Assistant Director General for Education de l'UNESCO. C'est à vous, madame.
Merci beaucoup, Annette. Merci beaucoup, Ministre Blanquer, pour la présentation de cette...
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation, Minister Blanquer. Thank you for the presentation of this very important initiative. We are delighted that France has decided to take advantage of this International Day and of this conference to send out an appeal for an appropriate code for the Internet to combat bullying, cyberbullying, and grooming of children. UNESCO supports this initiative. We know that cyberbullying is a major problem that affects all countries. I can assure you that UNESCO will support all member states in their efforts to combat bullying in all its forms. And in the closing of this day, of this very important day, I would like to express very warm thanks to the French Ministry of National Education, to the minister himself, and to all of the ministers and panelists who joined us today. And you yourself, Annette, thank you for your excellent moderation of the conference. Thank you very much for those closing words. Yes, you're all right. Brigitte Macron is going to close off this wonderful day, this wonderful international conference. Thank you very much for all of you participating. It's a wonderful example of multilateralism, bringing together representatives of as many countries as possible. So before leaving you in the hands of the First Lady of France, let me summarize in just one sentence what I've learned today. To succeed in combating bullying, we need a long-term strategy that includes a political will and a regulatory framework, the support of the teaching staff, a climate of safety at school, which includes all of the stakeholders in the educational effort, mechanisms for reporting, appropriate monitoring of relationships among students with a particular attention being paid to minorities and sexual minorities. But I leave you in the hands of two football players, one who plays for Chelsea, one who plays for France, and together they are committed to this wonderful, inclusive initiative that has been launched recently by a group of footballers called Positive Footballers. So let us all contribute to stopping bullying at school. Thank you for your attention.
Quand on n'est pas la cible, on est la solution par une petite attention, un regard ou des gestes amicaux. Et je pense que c'est important d'en prendre conscience, qu'on est tous aptes à s'aider les uns les autres.
Changer la vie ou soutenir une personne, c'est pas forcément en s'interposant, en jouant les héros, mais ça peut être tout simple en marquant une marque d'attention et le soutenir.
Cette campagne contre le harcèlement, j'ai tenu à la faire avec Amel Majri, Eugénie Le Sommer et N'Golo Kanté, tout simplement pour être plus forts ensemble. On retrouve ces notions de solidarité dans le sport, mais c'est important d'en prendre conscience dans la vie de tous les jours.
J'ai voulu participer à cette campagne parce que le harcèlement scolaire, c'est des choses que j'ai vues, c'est des choses que j'ai connues, ça peut faire mal, ça peut détruire une enfance. Et voilà, je tenais à participer pour sensibiliser les jeunes, de dire que aider une personne qui est en difficulté, ça peut changer toute son enfance et sa vie.
Les professeurs éduquent aussi nos enfants et ils passent énormément de temps à l'école. Donc c'est important qu'il y ait ce respect et cette relation de confiance entre parents-professeurs, entre élèves-professeurs. Je prends le temps, tu vois, de communiquer avec mes enfants, de leur parler, de prendre la température, de savoir comment ils se sentent à l'école. On a tous eu affaire, chacun dans notre jeunesse à l'école, à faire face à des réflexions ou des petites remarques qui peuvent être blessantes, mais dont l'auteur ne se rend pas compte de la méchanceté. Le harceleur, aujourd'hui, je le qualifierais d'inconscient, faible et lâche. C'est important d'accueillir et de mettre à l'aise chaque individu dans un collectif, dans une équipe. C'est important que chacun puisse s'exprimer et ne pas rester en retrait. Et je pense que le sport te permet justement de sociabiliser et d'aller vers les autres, de ne pas rester renfermé ou entre guillemets menacé. Les nouvelles générations sont de plus en plus connectées sur les réseaux sociaux et Internet, la génération 2.0. Donc il faut faire surtout attention aussi au contenu auquel ils peuvent avoir accès. Ça, je suis toujours juré de faire très attention à ça. Après, j'estime avant tout aussi que la communication est importante, encore une fois, est importante pour donner confiance à ton enfant quand il en a besoin, parce qu'un enfant en confiance, c'est un enfant qui va pouvoir, à un moment donné, s'ils se sent menacés, se défendre et surtout défendre les autres.
Le harcèlement scolaire, quand on n'est pas la cible, on est la solution.
She can't. You can't.
Tina, listen to us.
Oh my God. Why would you talk to her? Nice hat.
It's like a big sock. Throw it back. It's Tina's.
Come on, throw
it's Tina's. Throw it back. Come on, Belle.
Just throw it.
Throw that. Throw it back. Throw it. It's Tina's. Belle, throw it back. Belle.
Hey, Tina, do you want to sit with me?
Oh.